What's up YouTube, it's Pico.Blurred back at it again with another tutorial. If you've been having trouble trying to attack fades on Mexican style hair, definitely watch the whole video. And be sure to watch to the end of the video to see how this haircut turned out. So without further ado, let's get into it. If you guys have watched my videos before, you know that I always start with this step first for my fades. Clearing out the bulk, either with my number 2 or number 4. Right here I'm using my number 2 since I'm trying to keep the fade a little bit lower under the bulk. But I'm taking that number 2 up, just trying to clear the bulk so I can set up for my fade. Now with this step, since we're just clearing the bulk, you don't have to be super precise with it. Just clear all the bulk enough to where you can see what you're doing to set in your initial guideline. In my opinion, if you try to set in your initial bald guideline with too much bulk, you can't really see the line, so it's not going to come out as clean, and then it's going to set you up for failure later on down the fade. You're going to have to do a bunch more detail work, so just be clean with this step, clear out everything so you can see. Alright, time to start my fade process. I'm using my trimmers, not using super harsh pressure, just so I don't create a super harsh line, so it's easy to get out when I come back to fading my first guideline. And as you can see, I'm kind of dropping it towards the back just so I can flare out the back of his head a little bit more rather than going straight across. When I'm putting in my bald guideline, I usually try to contour the head shape just so it fits him a little bit better. You kind of want to treat every fade on a different person, specifically for them, their head shape, how their head moves, how their hair moves, everything like that. So right here I'm clearing out all of that under the initial guideline just to get everything bald and ready for my fade. Now there's some people that leave this step to the end. I like to go ahead and get that over with, get everything cleared out. So when I put my my first guideline with the clipper open, I know what I'm blending into. Like I can see the line disappear because I already blended out the bottom, I already balded out the bottom, it's ready to go. Also, another tip with this, make sure you have a comb or a brush handy to get all that debris off of the canvas. You want to make sure that it's clear, you can see what you're doing. Grab that brush, brush all that hair off as you're going through. After I'm done balding out with my trimmers, I take my shavers just to have another level of gradients on the fade. I try to get the bottoms extra bald, so the shaver's gonna do that trick. Towards the top of that initial line, I usually go down with my shavers just so I don't create a super harsh line that I can't take out. And then towards the bottom, I kind of flick up and out again, so I'm not creating a super bald guideline, another line that I can't take out. Stretching the skin also makes this step a little bit easier, giving you a flatter surface to glide through those hairs. With this step, let the machine do the work. You don't have to pressure it, you don't have to put too much force on it. Just let the machine do what it's supposed to do, and it's going to clear that out for you. Alright, now that everything is prepped, it's time to start the fade process. So I take my clipper all the way open and I set in my first guideline, making sure to be extra precise and clean with this step. It'll set me up for an easier fade down the line, and I don't have to do as much detail work afterwards. I usually do a couple passes through each panel just so I can make sure it's all one length and ready to go for my fade process. Time to start blending out that guideline. When I fade, I use the blending down technique in each guideline. So towards the top of that guideline, I'm lever all the way open, and as I go down, I'm closing the lever little by little until I see that line disappear. As I'm going down and closing the lever also, notice how I'm flicking out. I'm not holding the blade super flat on the skin. I'm using a lot of the corners just to feather that out. Feather that line out, you'll see that line start to disappear, flicking out so I don't push the fade higher than I want it to be. When I'm fading, I like to usually go all the way around the head. I don't like to do it in sections just because I feel like I can't match it up on each side. So I make sure each side is all even, each side is equal, and then I fade all the way around from one side to the other. And like you can see, man, you can see that line just starting to disappear and that fade coming together on the bottom. I only leave this step once I'm satisfied with the blend and see that the lines are all out. Now we're gonna go in and do some detail work at the end of the fade, but like I said, I like to get this part pretty much done just so I don't have to worry about it as much at the end of the fade. I can focus on different things. Time to put in my second guideline. So I take my number 1 with the lever all the way open, and I'm going about a ½ inch to an inch. Please be sure to always start with the lever open. You never want to go in lever closed because you can always take off hair, but you can't put hair back on. It's just a safety kind of measure in case, especially if you're new fading, you don't want to take the fade up too high. You don't want to mess them up. So for my beginners out there, definitely use the lever open. Towards the top of this guideline, I'm kind of flicking out into the bulk just so I don't create a super harsh guideline. It's going to be harder to blend in later. So I'm flicking out. I'm already setting myself up to have an easier job blending into the bulk. Once I'm happy with my guideline placement, it's time to blend it out. So I take my half guard, again, lever open, and I'm blending down. So I start with my lever open all the way at the top of the guideline, and as I go down little by little, I'm closing that lever. Make sure to use your corners and lever play. If you see some dark spots that aren't blending out, mess around with the lever, see what works. You'll hear it, you'll hear the crunch, you'll see it kind of disappear before your eyes. So play around with that lever until it's as blurry as you want it to be. Like I said in my other tutorials, I think that the half guard is definitely like the major step to bring this fade together, blending in the bald guideline into the number 1, into the bulk at top. That half guard is going to do some magic for you. You'll start to see this blend start to become super blurry, and it's going to look super good with this step. So definitely work with that half guard, making sure that it comes out just the way you want it to. If you're having trouble blending out with any of these steps, try to do it in like 1 inch increments. And what I mean by that is like 1 inch width, just so you're not taking on too much hair at one time. Sometimes taking smaller little sections will help you with your fade process, just because you're not focused on spreading the blend all the way from the edge up all the way to the back of the head, for instance. You can kind of take it out little by little, and you'll start to see, you know, the fade go up, it'll blend out, and then you have that next section to work on. So since I cleared out all the bulk with number 2, I'm using my 1.5 guard to blend that number 1 into the number 2, using lever play to get that blended out and into there. I'm trying to keep bulk at the top. I'm trying to keep it dark near the parietal ridge. So I'm using this to blend into that number 2, flicking out so it goes straight into that number 2. I don't have to create another guideline and then have to blend that out as well. Again, notice how after every kind of flick with the clipper, I'm using my comb to clear out all the debris in the way. If you have a clear canvas, you have a better time fading. Now there's a couple steps that I couldn't quite see because I didn't realize that my camera didn't pick it up, but I'm about to step into some clipper over comb, some shear over comb, just to get that bulk a little bit blended better, lighter, not as heavy. And when you're doing thinning shear over comb especially, do not dig in or else you're gonna create gaps. So try to cut off just pretty much the tips. So now my fade steps are pretty much done. So I'm just going back through my steps and detailing the fade. The detail is what's going to bring this fade to the next level, set you apart from other barbers. Now I'm going to start adding texture on the top, so I get my client's hair wet, because the straight hair you want it wet so you can cut it easier. And so to add texture, I'm going in point cutting the tips at an angle, and it'll break up the hair enough. It's not going to take off length really, but it's going to add a bunch of texture in since you're kind of breaking it, creating different lengths in the hair. Now for one of the most important steps is that clean pop of the edge up. And as you can see, I'm starting 2 initial guidelines, one at the bottom of the C cup and one at the top of the C cup, and I'm just gonna marry everything together using my edges, and I'm just kind of etching out, rounding out that C cup area. You gotta be super light with this step too, because your trimmers can be really sharp. So you definitely don't want to apply too much pressure. You'll end up cutting your client, and that's not a good look. It'll leave red marks, cuts on the edge up, and then people's gonna notice that. You definitely don't want that to happen, so be light with this step. And now to finish it all together with some aftershave so he doesn't get razor bumps and all that. And this is the final cut. It all came together. Look how blurry that's looking, man. But anyway, it's your boy Pico.Blurred. If you like the video, drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe so you can stay up to date with all the content, and I'm gonna catch you guys later. Peace.